As the plane touched down, Maya Johnson leaned back in her seat. She looked out of the small window, calm on the outside. But inside, her thoughts were sharp. She had been quiet during the flight, silent even. But her silence wasn't weakness, it was power. She had recorded everything. Every rude word, every cold look, every unfair moment. And just 20 minutes before landing, she had pressed send. Not to a friend, not to social media, but to someone who had more power than the flight crew could ever imagine. Landing trouble. The crew smiled at the other passengers as they left. Thank you for flying with us. Have a nice day. But when Maya stood up, the mood changed. The same male flight attendant who had doubted her earlier now blocked her path slightly. Miss, I'd like to speak to you about earlier. I think you misunderstood some things. Maya didn't even stop. She looked him in the eye, gave a small, calm smile, and said, I understood everything. Then she walked off the plane. The crew looked at each other nervously. The female attendant whispered, Do you think she's going to complain? She didn't say anything during the flight. The man replied, She's probably just upset. She'll get over it. But they were wrong. Very wrong. The email that changed everything. In a tall glass building miles away, a woman sat at her desk going through morning emails. Her name was Rita Adams, and she was the vice president of passenger rights at the International Aviation Authority, the same organization that reviewed airlines, investigated complaints, and made sure travelers were treated fairly. One email caught her attention. Subject: Discrimination and Abuse on Flight 704. It was from Maya Johnson. Rita read through it slowly, carefully. She watched the attached video. Her eyes narrowed. Her jaw tightened. The behavior was clear: disrespect, racial bias, verbal coldness, and violation of service rules. And then she saw Maya's signature. Maya Johnson, Senior Inspector, International Aviation Authority. Rita stood up immediately. Get me the CEO of Sky High Airlines, she said to her assistant. Now. The panic call. Inside Sky High Airlines headquarters, the phones started ringing. The airline's CEO, Mr. Harrison, picked up the call from the Aviation Authority with a casual tone. But that tone vanished in 10 seconds. What do you mean? Possible suspension? Yes, Rita's voice replied. One of your top crew members was caught on video treating a passenger with racial bias. That passenger is also one of our senior inspectors. The CEO's face went pale. She didn't say anything during the flight. We had no idea. Exactly, Rita said coldly. She stayed silent so she could see your real face. Trouble for the crew. Back at the airline office, the flight crew from Flight 704 was called in for a meeting. They laughed on the way there. Maybe it's just a routine debrief. But the moment they entered the room, their smiles faded. HR officers sat at the table. So did 2 legal advisors. On a screen, the full video from Maya's phone played in front of them. Every word, every smirk, every unfair action. Their faces turned white. This isn't just about customer service, one officer said. This is a legal and public relations disaster. The male attendant tried to speak. We didn't know who she was. That's the problem, the HR woman said. You shouldn't have to know who someone is, to treat them with respect. Breaking news. The next day, the story broke. Airline crew caught discriminating against passenger, who turned out to be aviation official. News channels ran the story nonstop. Maya didn't speak to reporters. She didn't post online. She didn't have to. The video spoke for her. People all over the country watched and reacted. Some were angry. Some cried. Some remembered their own painful experiences. Others said, finally, someone did something. The airline's reputation began to sink. But this was just the beginning. Sky High Airlines was in full panic mode. The video of Maya Johnson had spread like wildfire. Social media was flooded with hashtags like Hashtag flyfair, hashtag respect all passengers, hashtag Maya speaks. People were angry, not just because Maya was treated badly, but because it reminded them of how often such things happened quietly, without anyone noticing. But this time, someone noticed, and that someone was powerful. Who is Maya Johnson? Inside a news studio, two anchors were reading breaking news. Tonight, we reveal the identity of the woman behind the viral video, the anchor said. She's not just a regular passenger. Her name is Maya Johnson. She is a senior inspector at the International Aviation Authority. She reviews safety, service, and ethics of major airlines worldwide. The second anchor added, she's the reason some airlines pass or fail inspection. Her word carries serious weight. The camera zoomed in on her photo. Calm, serious, and professional. Social media exploded. People posted comments like, "She's the quiet storm they didn't see coming. They tried to bring her down. Now she's lifting the truth. Maya is the hero we didn't know we needed." Meanwhile, at the airline, the CEO of Sky High Airlines, Mr. Harrison, sat in a meeting with his legal and PR team. "She's not just a passenger. She's a regulator," the PR head said. "And she's connected to government bodies." "Can we apologize publicly?" Mr. Harrison asked. The legal officer shook her head. "That won't be enough now. She hasn't said a word to the media. Her silence is louder than any press conference." Mr. Harrison rubbed his forehead. "So what now?" Another voice entered the room, the airline's compliance director. "We may have a bigger problem," she said. "There are old complaints from other passengers, similar to Maya's case, that were never addressed. Some were deleted, some were never followed up." The room went silent. Maya's quiet moves. Maya was not looking for fame. She didn't want revenge. She wanted change. And she was patient. She sat at her desk, surrounded by files and reports. She requested access to passenger complaint records involving discrimination, rudeness, or abuse. What she found shocked even her. 12 complaints in the last year from passengers of color, all involving the same airline. Many were ignored. Some were closed without investigation. And some were marked resolved when nothing had actually been done. Maya gathered everything into a file labeled Sky High Airlines, Pattern of Behavior. She sent it to the International Aviation Board. The subject line was clear. Request for immediate review. Systemic discrimination at Sky High Airlines. The public pressure builds. People around the world watched the story unfold. Other passengers began speaking out. Some shared stories of being disrespected by flight crews. Others said they were ignored, stared at, or made to feel like they didn't belong, just like Maya. A woman from Chicago posted, "I was once told, 'You don't look like someone who flies first class.' I stayed quiet. But Maya didn't. Thank you, sister." Another man tweeted, "I thought it was just me. Now I know it's bigger. It's a pattern. It's real." Maya didn't respond to these messages directly, but she read every single one. She smiled softly, then picked up her phone and made a quiet call. The call that changed everything. Rita Adams, vice president at the Aviation Authority, picked up the call. "Maya," she said, "the case is already under review. We've never seen this much public response before." "I know," Maya said gently, "but we need to go further." "What do you mean?" "We don't just punish the airline. We investigate how this was allowed for so long. We fix the system, not just the surface." There was a pause on the line. Then Rita said, "You're right. Let's make this bigger than just one flight." A message from Maya. That night, Maya finally spoke publicly. She posted a short video on her personal page. Her words were calm and simple. "This is not about me. This is about everyone who was ever told they don't belong because of how they look, speak, or dress. I stayed quiet to watch their actions. Now I speak, so we can change their ways. Respect should not depend on your seat number. It should depend on your humanity." The video was shared by celebrities, news anchors, and even other airlines. Sky High tried to post a public apology, but no one believed it anymore. People were listening to Maya now, and she had more to say. Maya Johnson sat in her quiet office, the sound of rain tapping against the window. In front of her were documents, dozens of them, stacked in color-coded folders. She had already revealed the truth about her own experience on Flight 704, but now she was digging deeper. She wasn't just searching for what happened to her. She was searching for what had happened to others, and what she found made her stomach turn. Hidden complaints. Maya had been given access to the airline's internal passenger reports through a formal investigation order. Some files were neat and clean, but others were marked as closed due to lack of evidence. One case stood out. A black man named Anthony Carter had filed a complaint 6 months earlier. He was removed from a first-class seat after being told, "You must have picked the wrong row." No investigation followed. The file was labeled, "No action needed." Passenger became aggressive. But when Maya looked deeper, there was no video evidence of aggression. In fact, CCTV from the airport showed Anthony speaking calmly. Security footage was never reviewed. Another case involved an Indian woman, Priya Singh. She was asked to prove she paid for her seat, even after showing her ticket. The staff accused her of acting suspiciously. Her complaint deleted. Maya's heart ached. "This isn't carelessness," she whispered. "This is a pattern." A whistleblower appears. Just as Maya was organizing her findings, she received an anonymous message in her inbox. Subject: "They forced us to stay silent." Attached was a video file. She clicked play. It showed a man in a sky-high uniform, face hidden, voice disguised. "I was part of the customer service team. We were told not to log complaints if they might make the airline look bad, especially ones about race or class. If we pushed too hard, we were warned. Some staff got transferred. Others lost their jobs quietly." Maya leaned back, eyes wide. This wasn't just bad behavior. This was a cover-up, inside the company walls. Meanwhile, at Sky High Airlines, the tension was boiling. Executives were arguing behind closed doors. "We should have handled this when the first complaints came in," one senior manager said. "We were told to protect the brand," another replied. And now, the CEO, Mr. Harrison, snapped. Now the brand is bleeding. Outside the company, protesters had started gathering near Sky High offices. People held signs. "Dignity has no seat number. Respect is not first class only. We are all Maya." The investigation gets bigger. The Aviation Authority called a formal hearing. Maya was invited to present her findings. She stood in front of a panel of leaders, lawyers, and regulators. Her voice was steady. She explained how complaints had been ignored, how files were erased, and how certain passengers were targeted again and again. She handed over every document, every report, every video. Silence filled the room. Then one board member asked her, "Miss Johnson, what would you like us to do?" Maya looked him in the eye and said, "Start over, not just this airline, the system. If we let this pass, we are telling every victim to stay quiet." The room remained still. Then another voice said quietly, "She's right." The world responds. That night, Maya's speech was shared around the world. News channels ran headlines. "Inspector Johnson exposes airline's racist culture." Whistleblower video confirms years of cover-ups. Passengers speak out. "We were silenced too." Airlines everywhere started reviewing their own complaint systems. Other inspectors followed Maya's lead. More whistleblowers came forward. People from all over began writing to Maya. Some thanked her. Some shared their pain. One little girl wrote, in a letter with crayon, "Thank you for standing up. I want to be like you when I grow up." Maya's quiet moment. Back home, Maya stood by her window. The world was loud, but her heart was calm. She had uncovered more than abuse. She had uncovered courage, buried deep in silence. She thought of Anthony Carter, Priya Singh, the hundreds of names in those forgotten files. She whispered, "I did this for all of you." But she knew it wasn't over. The final blow was still coming. The pressure on Sky High Airlines was rising fast. Public trust was falling. Protesters gathered outside airports. Every news channel replayed Maya Johnson's speech. People were canceling their tickets. Social media was on fire. But Maya wasn't done. She knew one final piece of the puzzle was still hidden. And when she found it, it would change everything. Late night, one email. It was 11:43 p.m. Maya sat at her desk, her eyes tired, her coffee cold. Her phone buzzed. New email. The subject line. Untold. Internal use only. No name. No signature. Just one line in the message. You've seen the surface. This is the core. Attached was a zip file. Maya paused. She had dealt with secret files before. She scanned it. No virus. Clean. She clicked open. Inside were dozens of internal emails from Sky High Airlines senior staff. And what she read made her hands shake. The file they never wanted anyone to see. The emails were written between managers, legal staff, and PR directors. In one, a manager wrote, "If complaints come from passengers in economy, especially minority groups, don't escalate. Statistics show public memory fades fast." In another, "If we punish staff for every little incident, we lose our firm image. Let it slide unless there's legal pressure." One email even mentioned Maya by name before her complaint went public. "If Maya Johnson's name appears in any complaint, alert the legal team. She's connected to the authority. Handle with extreme care." That meant they knew who she was all along. They weren't just rude because they didn't recognize her. They were rude despite knowing who she was. They thought she wouldn't fight back. They thought she would stay quiet. The evidence goes public. The next day, Maya met with her legal advisor. "This is explosive," he said. "If we release this, the airline might collapse." Maya looked him in the eye. "And how many passengers were crushed so the airline could stay standing?" He nodded slowly. Together, they sent the file to the Aviation Authority Board, and then to several major news outlets. Within hours, headlines appeared. Sky High emails leak. Discrimination was company policy. They knew about Maya, and still tried to silence her. Justice or collapse. What's next for Sky High Airlines? Sky High in crisis. In Sky High's boardroom, executives were shouting. The CEO slammed his hand on the table. "Who leaked those emails?" "We don't know, but the media has everything." "Everything." "Yes, sir. Even the part where we marked Maya as a risk. It's all over the internet." The legal director stood up. "We're being sued by 5 former passengers. 3 employees have come forward. The Aviation Authority might suspend our license. And..." She paused. "And Maya Johnson has been asked to lead the full investigation as a government-appointed special officer." The room fell silent. Their worst fear had come true. Maya wasn't just exposing the system. She was now in charge of fixing it. The world reacts. People everywhere celebrated Maya's courage. In schools, teachers shared her story. In offices, people quoted her words. TV shows aired interviews with passengers who finally felt seen. And Maya, she stayed calm, quiet, and focused. She wasn't in it for the fame. She was in it for the truth. A moment of peace. Late one evening, Maya stood on a balcony, holding a letter in her hand. It was from Anthony Carter, the man whose complaint had been buried months ago. "I saw you on TV. I cried. Not because I was sad, but because someone finally stood up for people like me. Thank you, Maya." She smiled, then looked up at the sky, the same sky where the airline thought they could hide their secrets. Now, Those secrets had been pulled out of the clouds and shown to the world. The world had changed because of Maya Johnson. Airlines were rewriting policies. Passengers knew their rights. More people were speaking up when treated unfairly. And Maya was still standing, tired, scared, but proud. The sky-high scandal had shaken the skies, but the storm wasn't over yet. The airline had one last move, and Maya was ready. The counterattack. Sky-High Airlines was nearly finished, but instead of accepting defeat, the company launched a powerful legal move. They hired a top legal team to fight back publicly. They filed a lawsuit against Maya Johnson herself. The charge: defamation. They claimed she had damaged their reputation, shared private emails illegally, and caused millions in losses. The CEO's replacement said in a press conference, "We believe in fairness for all passengers, but we also believe in the truth." Maya Johnson created panic, not peace. Many people gasped. Was the airline trying to silence her again? Maya's response: Maya stood calmly on the courthouse steps. She held a microphone. Her voice didn't shake. "They are trying to punish me for telling the truth. But let me be very clear. I would do it again. Because people matter more than money. Because dignity cannot be delayed. And because silence helps no one, especially those suffering quietly." Crowds behind her cheered. Some held up signs. "We stand with Maya. Truth is not a crime. Let her fly." The final witness. During the trial, the airline's lawyers tried everything. They showed charts. They claimed Maya had twisted the facts. They even tried to bring up her past, hoping to make her look emotional and unprofessional. But Maya had prepared for this. She stood and handed the judge a sealed envelope. "This," she said, "is from a former Sky-High executive. It was sent anonymously." The judge opened it. Inside was a letter. Asterisk, "I worked at Sky-High for 15 years. I saw how we ignored complaints. I saw how people were treated differently. I even saw the board meeting where they said, 'If Maya Johnson causes trouble, we'll crush her.' That's when I left." She didn't lie. She didn't twist. She told the truth the world needed to hear. Asterisk, a former executive. The courtroom fell silent. Then the judge nodded slowly. "I've heard enough." The verdict. On the final day of the trial, the judge delivered the decision. Sky-High Airlines, he said, has failed to protect its passengers. It has failed to treat all people with respect. And now it has failed in this courtroom as well. The lawsuit was dismissed. Maya Johnson was declared innocent. And the airline: fined, blacklisted for 6 months, forced to pay settlements to over 40 passengers. Her final flight. Weeks later, Maya boarded a plane for the first time since it all began. She wore a simple blue dress. She carried no bodyguards. She held only a notebook in her hand, filled with letters, testimonies, and dreams. The flight crew looked at her, smiled, and said, "Welcome, Ms. Johnson. Thank you for flying with us." There was no smirk, no judgment, just respect. She smiled, took her seat in first class, not because of money, but because of what she'd earned. A young girl sitting across the aisle looked at her with wide eyes. "Are you the lady from the news?" the girl whispered. Maya nodded and smiled. The girl held up a drawing. It showed a plane, a heart, and a woman with curly hair. The title: Maya in the Sky, A New Legacy. Maya later started a nonprofit called Flight for Fairness. It helped passengers fight for their rights. It trained airline staff in respect and equality. And every year, she gave scholarships to young women dreaming of working in aviation. She proved that one voice could change the air around the world. The news cycle kept spinning. Zara's name was now everywhere. TV interviews, newspaper covers, even podcasts. Some people called her a hero. Some called her a genius. Others just called her the girl who stopped the sky. But Zara didn't care about fame. She didn't feel powerful. Because for her, Power wasn't about control. It was about truth. And she had delivered it, loud and clear. The invitation. One day, Zara received a letter. It was from the National Aviation Honor Board. She opened it slowly. Inside was a formal invitation. You are invited to accept the posthumous National Honor Medal on behalf of your late father, Engineer Riemann, for his service to national aviation safety. Zara's hands trembled. She had waited years for this, not for the medal, but for the world to finally say, "We were wrong," and he mattered. The ceremony. The hall was filled with people, pilots, engineers, government officials. The stage was decorated with white roses and a blue banner that read, "For those who keep us safe above the clouds." When Zara's name was called, the entire room stood. She walked slowly to the stage, holding her father's photo. A soft instrumental played in the background as the medal was placed in her hand. A moment of silence followed. Not for her. For him. For Riemann, the forgotten genius. The kind man who never shouted, never fought back, but built something that had protected millions. Her speech. Zara didn't prepare a fancy speech. She simply looked out at the crowd and said, "My father didn't have power. He had purpose. He didn't want a stage. He wanted safe skies. You took his name from history, but you couldn't take it from me. This medal is not a reward. It's a correction." The room was silent again. Not in shame, this time in respect. Beyond the headlines, after the ceremony, Zara disappeared from the spotlight. She didn't sign book deals. She didn't run for office. She went back to her firm, continued her work in quiet. But something had changed. People now checked before they erased names. They looked deeper before they blamed someone. And across the world, young women studying tech and law would whisper her name with pride. If Zara could do it, so can I. One last message. Weeks later, Zara visited her father's grave. She placed the medal there, gently. Then she spoke, softly but firmly. "They thought I was powerless, but they forgot who raised me." She stood up, wiped her eyes, and walked away, her father's name now shining in the sky, where it always belonged. 2 years had passed since Zara Riemann shook the aviation world. The headlines had faded. News stories had taken over the media. But in quiet corners of classrooms, tech labs, and law schools, her story lived on. A new generation. In a university classroom in Lahore, a girl named Amina sat at her desk. She was just 16, wearing a faded scarf, with a notebook full of dreams. Her teacher asked, "Who inspires you?" Amina stood and said, without hesitation, "Zara Riemann." She didn't raise her voice. She raised her father's name. Others in the room nodded. Zara had become more than a name. She had become a lesson. Not about revenge, but about justice. Not about power, but about truth. The program. Quietly, Zara had started a foundation, the Riemann Initiative. It offered scholarships to students whose parents had been wronged or ignored. It trained young girls in legal rights, cybersecurity, and ethics. It didn't have fancy buildings or huge ads, but it had results. In its first year, 200 girls joined. By the second year, over 1,000. Every student received a simple journal on day one. The first page said, "Your voice is not small. The world just hasn't heard it yet. Speak with proof. Stand with truth." Signed, ZR. The silent visit. One winter evening, Zara visited the airport again. Not as a hacker, not as a fighter, just as a passenger. She walked past Gate 14, the same place where everything began. She saw a little girl sitting there, holding a toy plane. The girl smiled and said, "I want to fly one day." Zara bent down and whispered, "Then make sure the sky remembers your name." Beyond the story. Some people still didn't know her story. Some forgot. But it didn't matter. Because Zara didn't fight for attention. She fought for her father's truth. And that truth had taken flight in every plane that now carried the Raman system, in every girl who dared to question the world, and in every quiet person who believed that one voice, backed by truth, could move mountains or ground an entire airline.